Thank you for joining us today. Now, as we spoke before, your written testament will be made part of the hearing record, and you are now each recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your remarks. Mr. Yoes, we will begin with you when you are ready.
Well, thank you, and good morning, Chairman Smith, Ranking Member Carter, and distinguished members of this Ways and Means Committee. I want to thank you for having this hearing. My name is Patrick Yoes, National President of Fraternal Order Police, and I represent 373,000 rank-and-file police officers. The Fraternal Order Police is the nation's largest and oldest law enforcement labor organization. Mr. Chairman, I'm grateful that you're holding this hearing to examine the impact of the windfall elimination provision and government pension offset on hardworking Americans who chose a career in public service. Approximately 1.9 million beneficiaries, or 4% of the eligible population, are impacted by windfall elimination. It is estimated, however, that 60% of all of America's law enforcement officers are affected by this provision. Between 2000 and 2008, the House and the Senate had a combined 7 hearings on windfall elimination and government pension offset. Apart from this committee's markup last year, which was done solely to block a vote after we reached 305 co-sponsors, there's been no action or consideration since 2008. So while I welcome the opportunity to be here today to talk about windfall elimination government pension offset and how it hurts this nation's retired law enforcement officers, I also am here to express our deep frustration of my members. Simply put, law enforcement officers who served in an agency outside of the Social Security system may lose up to 60% of their Social Security benefit, of which they're entitled by virtue of secondary or post-retirement employment. We were required to pay the same amount into the Social Security system as every other American, and yet we're not guaranteed the same benefits, all because we answered the call of public service. The Fraternal Order Police contends that this provision has a disproportionate impact on law enforcement officers. An early study suggests that 75% of those impacted are law enforcement officers or other public safety employees. Law enforcement officers are likely to retire earlier than other public employees because of the extreme physical and mental demands of police work. After a full career in law enforcement, officers who will retire may begin a second career and pay into the Social Security system, and this creates an unjust situation for many of our members. We were entitled to the pensions that we earned and paid into our entire career, but we also worked into jobs that paid into Social Security and fully paid into that system as well, just like every other American. While GPO impacts fewer people, its effects sometimes can even be more profound. According to the Social Security Administration, of those directly affected by GPO, 52% were spouses, 48% were widows and widowers. An astonishing 70% of all affected by government pension offset had their benefits completely eliminated. That means that we paid into a system that won't go to our survivors, but it'll stay like every other American, but it'll stay within a system to pay for someone else's benefits. Do we not see how outrageously unfair that is to public employees and their spouses? Additionally, the profession of law enforcement is facing an existential crisis in recruiting the next generation of law enforcement officers, and the very existence of windfall elimination provision and government pension offset discourages anyone from choosing a career in public service. When a prospective candidate learns that any Social Security credit or benefits that they have earned, even in the private sector, or will earn in the future, could be reduced, it makes the career of law enforcement a lot less attractive. For 40 years, Congress has avoided addressing the long-term viability of Social Security and used it as justification not to repeal the windfall elimination provision or government pension offset. Instead, Congress has knowingly embraced these unfair provisions by ignoring the victimization of the very people in our society who work so hard for fairness. Public employees did not create the destabilization of the Social Security system, yet we're the only class of employees that Congress is forcing to give up our earned benefits. How is it fair to make a public employee pay the same rate in the Social Security system as every other American and then legislate the same benefits away that are afforded to them? We're not asking for special treatment or anything more than we've already fairly earned. We're just simply asking for fair treatment. The windfall elimination provision and government pension offset is wrong, unfair, and frankly, it's dishonest. If this scheme was being run by a pension board or private money management group instead of the Social Security Administration, we wouldn't call it an elimination of windfall or an offset. We'd call it by the criminal statutes of which Congress has passed to protect hardworking Americans. One entity enriching itself by denying the benefits earned by an individual is criminal, and that's exactly what the Windfall Elimination provision in government pension offset does. Ultimately, this is about fairness for the men and women who have sworn to serve and protect our communities across America. And instead, we're treated like second-class citizens and subject to arbitrary formulas that reduce benefits for which we have been fully taxed and which we're entitled. Both provisions should be repealed immediately, and I encourage all of you to go back to Washington, please. Let's pass H.R. 82, the Social Security Fairness Act. Mr. Chairman, I'm honored to be here today. It's been 15 years in waiting for my members to be able to talk about something that has been so devastating to them. I get calls every single week of members trying to figure out how they're going to pay their bills, and they're not asking for handouts. They're just asking for what they earned. And I think this is a great first step. Let's fix this Social Security system. Let's fix this inequity. Let's take 40 years of treating public employees unfairly, and let's straighten the system out. I'm willing to work together with you to do that. I thank you. Gary, thank you for the question. Full disclosure, I have not started collecting Social Security. I know that I will be impacted by it when I do. However, I can speak on behalf of my members. I can tell you that there's not a day goes by, or at least 5, 6 times a week, that I don't get a phone call from one of our members struggling, trying to figure out how they're going to pay their bills and trying to reconcile how the inequities of these provisions and wanting to know when we're going to fix it. So all I can do is speak in generalities of my members that feel that they've been betrayed simply because they chose a profession of a public service and looking for some type of relief. And I'm grateful for being here today that maybe we can move in that direction.
Thank you. Mr. Yoes?
Well, I think I'm probably like most people that find themselves in this situation, that when these provisions were enacted, there was a grandfather clause for people that were affected. So those that were immediately affected didn't see the concern with it. I think those that are in my category just didn't quite grasp what we were looking at and the impact that it would eventually have on me. So it wasn't until later on in my career I realized that Windfall Elimination government pension offset was going to be something that was going to drastically impact my retirement. And
do you know about how long into your career?
It wasn't until the last part of my career. I did 36 years, so I would say that I probably became more aware of it only because of my position in the Fraternal Order of Police, because I was hearing from so many members. And it took me, a little self-reflection of how it was going to affect me as well. And I think most of us had the disbelief that government would not do that to us. Government protects us. The whole system was built on fairness, and there's nothing fair about this at all.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I want to thank you all for holding this hearing, and I think Mr. Estes said something that was really important, just in regard to the committee wanting to go out to real America and spending time with real people, not stuck in this bubble of Washington. And this is a real penalty that's affecting real people all across this country. Mr. Yoes touched on, I think, a really important component of what it is that we're facing right now. You have all heard of the awful activities of people like Bernie Madoff and one of the awful investor groups here in Louisiana that impacted so many folks, the Stanford Group. They charged people money or took money under the auspices of doing something and then diverted it to another cause. In the real world, that's called embezzling, and people go to jail for it. And in this case, it appears that Congress is calling it budgeting and acting like it's okay. I understand the intention of Congress in the late 70s and early 80s when they were trying to help to right-size this, I guess. But let's be clear, they got it wrong. They got it wrong. I understand, and all of us up here, Republicans and Democrats, everyone wants to ensure the sustainability of the Social Security Trust Fund so it's there for generations to come. And I understand that anything that you do that causes faster expenditures, causes that insolvency rate, or causes the Social Security Trust Fund to go in the red faster, I get it. But I want to come back to the point. Mr. Yoes, you joined the St. Charles Parish Sheriff's Office to ensure justice, to ensure that people were being held accountable for doing what's right, doing what's wrong, I guess held accountable for doing what's wrong. In this case, watching your own government step in and charge fees, and I think of Ms. Porter, your husband didn't paid for decades and didn't receive a penny. How does that make you feel that your own government is doing this?
Well, first, Mr. Graves, thank you. You are a strong advocate, work very closely with your office, and thank you for the work that you do for Windfall, Elimination, Government Pension Offset. You give us hope. So thank you, and the entire committee. I think when you look at this, I don't envy the position that all of you in. You have a very difficult position of trying to find a system and keep it solvent. I understand that. That is a challenge. I can somewhat understand how you could argue saying, okay, if you're already receiving a government pension, then somehow you're going to get a second government pension and you're going to have a windfall. But let's just look at the reality of it. We paid for our pension. We paid into it. Just like someone in the private sector would pay into their 401k or any other retirement plan they do. What I don't understand is why it's taken 40 years to recognize that, yes, they did get it wrong. Maybe it was trying to find a way to shore up a system, but at some point, when did we recognize that what we're doing is an injustice to the very people who are working in public safety or public employees, but we're not doing anything to fix it? And we've got an opportunity now to do it. Well, I think it is a little bit of a slap in the face to recognize that any other class of employees, any other American would be entitled to those benefits. But these are eliminated because of the public pension. I do think it's ironic, and I think most of our members do, that we are actually recognizing our contribution into a pension system and considering it a windfall, but not recognizing our contribution into the Social Security system. Somehow that's not a win. That's viewed different. So we earn both of these benefits, but they're being taken from us. So I think most of our members are looking at this as an inequity that just that as something that probably did not hit their radar, because when they first got into this profession, Social Security was something that was so far down the road that they didn't know how it was going to impact them. It is not until it's time for you to start making plans for retirement that you realize that the gate's been open. Well, I think if you look at people that are and traditionally we are struggling trying to recruit the next wave of law enforcement, not at a level that we can sustain the numbers that are leaving. So we're in an existential crisis right now. One of the problems that we have is I think we need to look a little different in our recruiting. But unfortunately, with Windfall, Elimination, Government Pension Offset, what we don't have is a pool of people who are already in the workforce that would be willing to give up a benefit in order to come in to a field of public safety.
That's a good point. So
it is the number one issue I hear about from my constituents. It's the number one issue I'm trying to wrap my head around and fully understand, which leads me to my next question to the witnesses. Can any of you explain to me the funding formula and what is wrong with it? Anyone want to take a stab at it? I'm confused too, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying earnestly, in all seriousness, to find out what is the answer to that question, because no one can really explain it to me. And I think that's where we have to drill down and really get to the heart of the matter. Where is it wrong? Do you want to take a stab at it?
I cannot tell you. I understand the formula. I can't tell you there's any logic to it. What I can tell you is how we can fix it.
Okay.
We know that it's broken.
Right.
We know that we're taking money from people with an expectation they're going to receive a benefit just like every other American.
Right.
We know that it's flawed, but we're not taking any steps to correct it. The simple thing to do is just repeal it. Let's give everybody what they paid into the system. It's not a matter of where does the money come from. I can tell you exactly where it came from. It came out of every one of our paychecks. Mm-hmm. We paid into the system just like every other American.
That's right.
And because we picked public service, we should be treated like every other American as well.
Absolutely.